Welcome to Thriving Tribesmen. My name is Corey, your host, and I'm excited to be making this episode. And yes, just like the headline for this episode, I'm going to try and show you biohacking has sexual desire. This has been inspired by a podcast I was listening to from A Diary of a CEO, and there was a doctor called Dr. Mindy Plaz. She's a specialist with hormones and how hormones work, and she's just talking about it. And then the conversation landed on the menstrual cycle and what happens in terms of her mood and what is actually happening in terms of a psychological standpoint, from a sexual desire standpoint. So I'm going to try and just read out from the notes. It's a little bit sporadic in terms of the days, but it will sort of give you a picture on maybe how to actually see the optimum time to actually have that conversation that you've been meaning to have about, being in a sexless relationship. As you know, if you've listened to these episodes before, or listened to this podcast for a long time, I sort of disagree in actually having the conversation. You're better off spending more time trying to change your behavior rather than having the conversation, because there's a lot of skill required in order to have the conversation. There is a way of doing it. Like at the moment, I've been teaching the framework of 5 whys, but then also there have to be some body language techniques that you need to learn, your voice tone, being able to lean out, being able to lean in within the conversation, also mirroring, and there's so many other things that to make that effective conversation. There's quite a lot of things that need to happen. So I tend to just say, don't have the conversation. Just focus on you being happy. Just focus on you gaining your confidence, and then really disqualifying yourself from having sex anyways. And when you do that, it will start creating desire, and then therefore you'll be almost leading her from where you guys are, which is a sexless relationship, into a sexual success. Because when you really take away focus from the actual having sex, it actually creates desire for sex, which is pretty weird. You would think that if you need to be focusing on it in order for it to happen. So anyways, with Dr. Mindy, what she was talking about, the menstrual cycle, and she was saying the women have a menstrual cycle between 28 to 32 days, and really from day 1 to day 10, she's beginning to build estrogen as she's doing the menstrual cycle. And really in these times, especially on the first day and the second day, she'll probably be introvert. She'll be more within her feelings, or that's lack of a better term, but she'll be more introvert. So obviously with the cramps or pain, depending on what she experiences, but generally the fact that she's bleeding and she's going through this process, it's a time when she's more introvert. So the day 1 and day 2. Then day 3, that's when she will start building estrogen, and therefore that's when she'll be more verbal, more present, more outgoing, and feels like she can connect with you even more. And she also mentioned that this is the best time to actually have any conflict that you want to resolve, because of that estrogen, she feels empowered and she feels like she's ready to take on the world. So if you are going to have that conversation about sex, you're probably better off having it between that day 2 and day 12. So it's like that's the time when you can have that conversation. And she feels a little bit stronger. She feels a bit empowered. And as you keep going, that day 12 and 13, that's when she'll have the most estrogen peak. So that's when it's the highest. And again, you would pick your battles then, because again, she'll probably be very strong. She'll feel more masculine. But again, that's when she feels the most feminine, the most beautiful, So again, being able to be aware of that, what's going on, and being able to at least even you imagine giving compliments at that time, they'll land much better. And you'll be able to, even if you put flowers at that time and just said, you look radiant, you look beautiful, and she feels it, and you can tell it, she would feel more empowered because she feels radiant. And the fact that you're saying you look radiant and you look amazing, again, it just gives that confirmation, and then that's a credit to you. So again, this is I'm reading off my notes that I did when I was listening to this podcast. So I'm going to test this out too, but I thought I would make an episode so that you guys can also test it out as well. So hopefully, if you test it out, then we can both compare notes. So she went on to talk about the menstrual cycle also starts on day 12. So that's the best time. Well, that's when the menstrual cycle starts, and between day 10 and day 15. Sorry, because it's sporadic. I'm going to day 12, then I go back to day 10. So there's quite a lot happening within the intersecting days, but she said ovulation starts between sort of day 10 to it starts sort of around day 10, and when that ovulation starts, the libido is the highest. So between sort of day 10 and day 15, if you are going to have sex, that's probably the best time to have sex because her testosterone is gone higher and she's more susceptible to having sex. She's actually got sexual desire. It's at the peak. So again, this is the best time to have sex. So if you're going to do any seduction thing, if you're going to be putting candlelight, doing candlelight dinner, making things romantic, that will be the best time for you to actually have sex, especially that sort of day 10, day 15 after the menstrual, the period is probably the best time. That you want to say that between day 18, around that time, which is sort of day 18 to about 20, 21, you sort of avoid any conflict because there's a hormone called pedestrian, I think. I didn't know how to spell it, so I put pedestrian, but pedestrian. That's when it sort of starts and it continues on to sort of day 30. And she was talking about that, especially on that time, is probably the worst time to bring up any argument, bring up any conflict, because that's when she feels the most vulnerable. So she'll probably be the most lethal at that point. And again, if you've got daughters, probably this is one of the things that you might have to keep into account, that if she's going through a period, so she's now at that sort of day 18, and she's going through that period where that's the transition of going back into the menstrual cycle. So the body starts doing different things within the body, which then, again, if you bring conflict at that time, it's most likely going to be the one that lingers for a long period of time, because she's going to be completely hurt and she will completely hurt you, and then none of you are going to be able to recover from this conflict. So when I was listening to this, I sort of started seeing my relationship and started picturing different things within my relationship, and I started seeing where I would have done things wrong and where I should have done different things, did things a little bit different. So I thought I wanted to share with you guys because I thought this was very interesting, and hopefully this episode is as interesting as I thought it's going to be, because when you see it from this perspective, in terms of having the conversation, I was trading a guy today about having the conversation, and I was saying that you need to really be almost ice cold, like take out any emotion out of it, like your emotions, because obviously when you bring up the fact that there's no sex happening, she's going to then probably minimize, deflect, bring shame, do sort of things to really elicit some emotions from you. And if those emotions are negative, she will then point you out as a bad guy, and then that conversation ends and nothing's resolved. So again, now if you know also the day, it just optimizes that conversation and makes it much better, because now you can actually sort of plan out the day. You can really think about what's going on. So you also know that if she's between day 18 and 30, probably that conversation is not going to go well. And in terms of day 10 and day 15, you know that, okay, if I'm going to have sex, this is probably the time I'm going to have sex with her. So because she's peaking testosterone. So testosterone. So this is going to be, I thought it's going to be an interesting one. It's something that I'm going to now to pay attention to. I'm going to really put that on my calendar when she goes on to her period, and then see what happens. So I'll give you guys an update on what's happening when I'm doing this. So I might do an update episode, and then we'll see how it goes. So thank you very much. I'll be speaking to you guys soon. Take care.